Hi, class. I just wanted to jump on here right quick to go over chapter five. Um, as I was grading the chapter five and your chapter five discussion, where you were doing your own defined um, queries that you were doing for summary queries, I noticed that people were really kind of struggling. And so, what I wanted to do, guys, I wanted to just come over here and do a quick lecture, probably about 30 minutes. About 30 minutes, kind of go over chapter five to help clear it up because I can clearly see that people are having problems. So with your summary queries, your queries use functions, aggregated function, very similar to Excel. You know how in Excel, when you want to add things, you use the sum function in Excel. You may use the average or min or count function. Well, now in SQL, you could do the same. I mean, you could do the same thing in SQL. So let's do this. I'm just going to do a basic select. I'm just going to do select all. I'm going to do from the invoices. I'm using the AP database, and I like to extend. I'm not for sure this recording. Hold on. Let's see. I don't see my recording. Okay, there it goes. I'm actually recording it on my computer instead of in the cloud, so that's fine. Um, so I'm just going to use the basic select statement. Again, I'm using my AP database, and I like to extend out on the left where you could actually see the actual table names, so you can see the column names to ensure that you are using the correct columns. And so this invoices table has, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 columns. So I'm just going to do select all from my invoice. I'm just going to run that quickly. And what it's going to do is going to return every column, as you see, invoice ID, vendor ID, every column in this particular table. Okay. That's what you were doing like in chapter 3. We did chapter 4, you did joining tables. With chapter 5, you're going to look at single tables and joining tables as well, but you're going to do some summary information. So for example, um, it pulled all that, but what if I want to see, and you can look down here and see that there are 114 records, or I could just click here and it show 114 rows. But what if I just want to, get that answer, like how many rows do I have? I don't necessarily want to see all the different data, not the detailed data, but just give me a summary of what I have. Then what I would do, I would just click in front of here, and I'm just going to do the count function. I'm gonna use the word count, and I'm just going to enclose the asterisk inside of parentheses. And what that's going to do for me, I got some extra space, but it really doesn't matter with the space. What this is going to do for me is just give me a count. I don't want the detail. I want a summary. How many records do I have? So I'm just going to execute this, and it shows me I have 114 rows. Now it says no column name. So I need to give it a column name because it's not pulling the actual columns. It's just going through and saying how many records I have. So I'm gonna use the alias name. I call it as, let's see, we're gonna call it number of I just call it number of records, or whatever you choose to call it. And now I'm going to run it again, and you're going to see that column name there. So this is a count function that will return the number of records that I have. Now, I'm going to use the same, let's do this. Let me go back and do select all right quick. I just want to see my column, see the information here. So I will show you something. So when I run that, so let's look at the payment total. What if I got all these different invoices with the vendors, and they have these different amount of the invoice total, how much money they owe. They have how much they've already paid, if they have any credit. So if they have any credit, I want to deduct any credit. And then also if they so I'm to take any credit minus any amount they owe, and that will give me how much they really owe, the balance. So it doesn't show me balance. Notice I do not have a column called the balance. I only have a column that's called the amount of the invoice, how much they paid, and if they have any credit. Because I can't say what the balance is going to be because people, even though I could set a payment to be like maybe 200 a month, people could pay more. So I don't know what they're going to pay until they pay it. So my balance is going to be not just a column called balance, but it's going to be whatever they paid, deduct that from their invoice total, and that's going to be the balance. So the balance is going to be derived based on what they pay. And again, I don't know what my customer is going to pay. They may pay more. So there's not a stationary column for balance due. It's going to be calculated. Okay. So knowing that, what if I just wanted to see the invoice total for all these invoices? How much do everybody owe me? So I need to add up all the totals. But what I need to do to get the add, I need to use the sum function. And I'm like, okay, so I want to sum or add. What do you want to add? I want to add the invoice total. Just go ahead and close that off. So now it's going to look at this particular column, which is here. It's going to total up all these for me and give me the sum. So now if I run this, it gives me the sum, but I don't have a column name. Okay. So I'll call it total amount. No, not total amount paid, total amount invoiced, or whatever it asks you to call it. So now I have a column name. Okay. So that is the sum of my invoice total. But what if I say, okay, I want you to show me the vendor's name. So I'm going to see the vendor's name also. So, well, now the vendor name is not showing the vendor ID. We'll have to add another table for the, let me do the vendor ID, comma. So in this invoice, I want to see the vendor ID because it's a vendor ID in the invoice table. To get the vendor's name, I'm going to have to bring in the vendor's table. Okay. And we can do that as well. And I'll show you that. So now I want the not only show me the sum of all of the records, but show me the vendor ID with the sum that that particular vendor owed. Now, if I run this, I'm going to get an error and I'm going to explain to you why. Let's go ahead and run it. So I have an error. It says that this table invoices, it says the vendor ID column from the invoice table, which is here. It says that it is invalid in this statement because it is not contained in either an aggregated function or the group by clause, letting me know, okay, you want me to take a sum of the invoices. That is a sum, a group, but the vendor ID is only one thing. So it's not going to match up. So you either have to do one of the two. You have to use another function on this particular column, or you have to use the group by clause. So I can group this particular column that is not being used as a function. So what I need to do, I'm going to have to say group by, and I have to group by the vendor ID. So it won't be left out here alone. Okay, so I'm going to group by, and I'm going to do vendor ID. And now I'm going to run this. And now you have the vendor ID, the total amount of invoices that this particular vendor owes, the total amount that this vendor owes, and you can also do the order by if it asks you to. Order by vendor ID, put it in order. But we have done enough here for the results to return. This is just going to put it in an order with the vendor ID or in order. So I'm going to execute this. And now we see a vendor ID are now in order. Same results, it's just they're in order because I used the order by. But you have to use the group by clause when on a column that is not being used as a function when you're doing the summary query. Okay, so let me show you when you want to put a where, and then you can put a where on there. So let me go ahead and do this. And what if I want to say where, like where the amount, let's put a condition on it because this is gonna return everything. Let's say only show me the amount where people who owe more than, let me look at some of these things. Okay, we have some people that's kind of low. Where maybe the total of their invoice amount is greater than a certain thing. Now watch this, I'm gonna show you this. Invoice total is greater than, let's do, let's see, let's do $100. Okay, I'm getting these little squiggly lines. Let me just run it and see why I'm getting these squiggly lines. Uh, Incorrect syntax near the keyword where. Okay, what is going on? Where, why can't I use where here? If you're gonna use it, the where has to come before. I'm just gonna move it. The where has to come before the group by. So if you're gonna use a where to put a condition on a column or multiple columns, the where needs to come by the group, need to come before the group by. Okay. And I'm going to show you another way to do it using what's called the having clause. The having is used with the group by. So now let's try to run it. So now we have less records because now I put a criteria. I only want to see the invoice total who has more than 100. If you look, all these people who are invoiced, they are invoiced for greater than 100. So it eliminated those people who had balances, well, not balance, but who had an invoice that was invoiced for less than $100. Okay. Again, the where, put a condition on it, and then you want to use the group by. I'm gonna copy this here so I can show you. And I'm just gonna go here and bring that down some. I'm just gonna paste it, do it again. So you can see that I could have also did, if I didn't want to use the where here, I'm just gonna delete it. And if I also want to do the same criteria, but I want to use the having also will put a condition on, just like the where, but having is specifically used with the group by, and it has to come immediately after the group by. So I could say having, and I'm just going to use this invoice total here. Greater than 100. Okay. So now I'm just gonna run both of them. And what you're gonna see, it should be the same. Let's look at why they are different. These should be exactly the same. Let me see. Let me bring that up. $72, $80. Let me go back. Let's see which one had the less. That one. So let me look at the bottom one here. See if I have any duplicate ones there. 34, 37, 48, 72, 80, 81, 82, 83, 86, 90, 95. That one. No, I don't know why. This should pull. What do we agree? What do we I have no idea. I don't see it. But they should have pulled the same one. They look like they're the same, but obviously they're not. Why? One and has 27, and this definitely has 28. I don't know if I got something duplicate there, or might have to use distinct or something. I don't know, but they look the same. I can't find it. But you can use the having function after the having keyword after you use the group by. Okay, so either one will work. Right now, I have no idea why it's not pulling the same data because it should. Um, let me show you. I got some stuff over here that I also wanted to show you. Uh, outside the count, the sum, we could do the average. I'm gonna go ahead and copy this that I already have to show you something. Let me just get a new window here. So let me show you this. Didn't do right. Like for my stuff to line up look neat. So gonna do comma to move my little picture down out the way. And I need a comma here. So let me show you. Let me move this over a little bit so I can have more room on everything to show here. So kind of put it. Let me run this, and then we're gonna let's see why. Converting date and our time from string characters. I have a quote as that, but invoice date is greater than. Let me just put my own. I had copied what I had in Word, and sometimes those quotation characters come over a little different. Okay, so I just deleted it and just used the quote, typed it in. Probably do the same thing. Let's see. Let me put that. Put my own quote. Was let's see. Now let me run it. So I want this to come over as my selection date. Now what I'm doing is using constant to show you. Let's see. Oh, duh. Now I didn't catch that. I didn't have my dashes in, but my date. So I thought it wasn't taking my quotes, but I copied over. Okay, so let's look at this. Let me bring this up so you can look to see the results. So in your select statements, you can use a couple of things. If you want to use what's called constant values, which means display in that particular um column exactly what I put inside the quotes. So I did select and I put inside the quote whatever you type in, and it's going to show there. You see that showing there. So you can use constant values or literal values in the select statement to display whatever you choose you want to display. Okay, put it inside the quotes. And the column name, I call it selection date. So that's why the column name is here. The next thing I want to see in the next column, I call it number of invoices. So that's the column name, that's the alias. And I want to see the count. Remember, the count will count how many records? 114. Now, let me show you how to use the same way you use the sum function. Okay. Remember, we did the sum on the invoice total here. You could use the average on that same particular column. You could do a different column or the same column. So this result is showing me the average of my invoice. I just use the average function in front of the invoice total. So it take all the invoice total, add it up, and then divide it by the number of invoice I have to give me the average. And then this one is giving me the sum, which is the total. Now, if I wanted to, I also can say, okay, show me the highest invoice, show me um the lowest invoice. I could just put a comma here and I could do um invoice total, and I'm going to use the max function, and I'm just going to enclose that. And now now I didn't give it a name as whatever, so the column name will just be empty. I'm just going to run it. And so now it's showing me um 379. I can't say that. Oh no, it's 37,000. So that's the highest one I have. And the min function, you just use the word min. That'll show me. I'm gonna run that. So $6 is the lowest invoice I have. So these are functions. Now, if you do use a column name again, so let's say I want to add another column. And I'm going to, let's see what column I'm using, that invoice table. Let's say, I got so many columns here. Let's see. No, I use the invoice total. Let's see, I use the invoice date. I want to see the invoice date. Now, this is where I'm going to get an error because I'm using a column without the group by or it not being a function. So I'm going to have to say, and remember, the group by has to come after the where. I can't put it before the where. So I'm going to say group by invoice date. And now I'm going to run it. And now I have that same information now showing the invoice date, but I had to use the group by to get it or get an error message. Okay. Let's see what else we want to cover. Now, the min and max, it can be used. And notice that when I use like the average, I use the sum. These are numeric data. These are numeric data. So I could do a sum of that. And I could do a average of that. But your columns, um, the min and max function, it uses numeric data as well. But min and max will also let you pull out um, alphabetical stuff. Like for example, let's say the vendor's name. Let me just delete this. Let me do select. I do vendor ID. vendor name from the vendors table. Okay. And I'm going to execute it. And I get all these different vendors with their ID and their name. But what if I wanted to use the main function, say, you know what, only show me the vendor, like what vendor, like maybe start with the letter A, or A's not, then B, but whatever. Okay. So um I can use the main function on the vendor's name, and I could use the max function. But again, I'm going to get an error message because I am using, make it look a little nicer, I am using a function here and not one here. So I got to use the group by. So this little vendor ID won't be out here by itself. And I'm just going to execute that. Nope, what it should have shown me is just the vendor name. Let's see, vendor ID, group by. Yeah, why does it just show? Let me make sure. Let me see. Table vendors, vendor name, and the vendor ID. Now, why is that not working? What am I doing here? Vendor ID, and I group by the vendor ID. I am having a time here. And the max, did it work with the max? It didn't work. It should be working. I don't know why I'm having a problem. I'm not for sure why that's not working. Because the min and max should work. That's odd as to why it's not working. Let me see what it do it this way, but it should work. Let me see what it just take out. Execute. But for some reason, I don't know why, but it should have worked. Let's do this. Let's do something. Demand, and I'm gonna do that vendor name again, and I'm gonna do man. I'm gonna close that off. Let me see what it showed me, the first and last based on the alphabet. So it showed me the person. This is the last person, and this is the first person. And then if you want to do a count, let's see, count, and we got to do count all the vendors' name. So we'll see how many we have. So we have 120, and you can give them alias name. I didn't give them alias name. So we have 122 vendors, and the person using the max function, which is the last one, with that name started with a Z, and then the man with that. Let's see. Let's see anything else. I already showed you the group having by. I showed you how to use the average. Oh, let's do this. If you had to group by two things, and also uses. Let me just copy this. Do this one. So if you had one that'll use two tables, okay, and also not only two tables but multiple columns, comma. I know it don't care about the space, but I like stuff to look a certain way. And then we could do the order by. Now, you don't really, I'm gonna take this off, we add it later. So what if I wanted to see, I wanted to use two tables, the invoice and the vendor. I wanted the vendor state, vendor city, and that those will be state and city here are in the vendors table. But I also wanted to use the invoice. I want to know quantity, how many invoices I have. I want to know the average invoice total. Well, that's going to come from my invoice table. So I'm going to use these two tables. So select the vendor state, city, and count how many invoices I have using the count asterisk that'll count all the invoices in that table. And then we already kind of went through this. The invoice total, looking at that column, and then add them up for all of them, and then divide it by how many to get the average. But we're just going to use average as give it this column name. So from the invoice table, I got to join my vendors table on the key, the primary key from one table, secondary key from other tables to tables, the key that they have in common. Now, because I have two multiple columns out here that are not using some type of function, I have to group by both of them. Okay. And now if I run it, scoot this up a little bit, then I get the results here. And then you can put it in order if you want to put it in order, but it's not necessary unless you want it to look nice. So we're going to execute this. And then now they're in order first within the state, because I did that as the big sort. So let's see, just for example, you have some states here. California has multiple states, but you see is A to Z for the states. And within the state, the next thing we're going to do within the state, we're going to go to the city. And if you see, the cities are also in alphabetical order ascending for the city within that state. Okay. You had one other thing that, uh, let's see what it was. Okay, I already showed you that. Having, um, oh, the roll up. Um, let's do, let me see. I got one here. I'm gonna do a different one, and I'm gonna do. Let's go down here, and I'm going to do. I'm gonna select the vendor ID. We're gonna get a count, and we're gonna sum the invoices as total invoice from that. So show me, make it look a little nicer. Show me the vendor ID. Look at the invoice. How many invoices I have. We're going to count them because I'm using count function. And then the invoice total. I'm going to call it this. I'll take this from the invoice, and then I want to do what's called roll up. What this will do, once it show all your particular rows, it'll add the last row, and it'll sum and put like a total there. So first, let me go ahead and run it. Execute. Doesn't have a function. So let me do this. And oh, I forgot I had that up there. Let me just delete that. Let me go ahead and execute this. And you'll see I have 34 rows. Okay. But this time when I do the roll up, what it's gonna do for me, I'm gonna go ahead and run it again. And now you see 35 rows. So what it'll do for me when I use the roll up, it'll put the keyword, it'll put like here where I don't have functions. What it's doing for me is summing these. It's taking to the invoice count, everything that has a function. I have 114, and then here I have 214,000 and something. So it's taking the sum of these and it's just putting the grand total for each one. And here it just put the null. So it'll put a null here because I'm not counting the vendor ID. I'm not putting a function on the vendor ID. So it'll just use null, and then it will give me return the total of my function. So that's what the rollup does for you. You had one in your homework like that. So this is what I'm gonna do, guys. Let you guys go ahead and go back over what I just did. Let you finish working on chapter 5. I know some of you have already turned it in, but I'm gonna give you opportunity to go in there and work on it. And after doing these little examples, and then resubmit that. Okay. Now some of you have already submitted it and you did well, but for those who need to work a little bit more on that chapter 5, there you go. Okay. Let me go ahead and